All right, so thank you all so much for taking the time to join me this morning. I am Hannah Gary, and I coordinate the LCDA, co-coordinate the pre-development program, and I coordinate this policy development program as part of the Livable Communities team. Please feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. There will also be some time at the end so that I can answer any questions that you might have. If you put a question in the chat, what I'll do is read it out loud and answer it so that we can go ahead and have that question and answer in the recording. And like I said, we're recording this session so that we can have it online so that you can look at the session after or share it with any folks who are not able to attend the session this morning. So today I'm going to give you a very brief overview of LCA. We'll talk about what the policy program is, get into some of those program details, go over application resources that we have available for you, and like I said, leave some time after for questions. So before we go into the details of the policy program, I'm just going to go over a little bit about LCA as a whole. So within LCA, there are a few different accounts, and each of the accounts share the same core goals. And those core goals are to create more housing choice by supporting affordable housing creation and preservation, supporting living wage job creation and increasing economic opportunity, providing better connections between jobs, housing, and amenities by improving transportation options and increased density. And the kind of overarching umbrella that all of those fall under is creating more equitable outcomes across the region. So now we've gone over those core goals of LCA. I'm going to get into the specifics of this policy development program. So this is only the second time that we have offered the policy development program, and it is the first year that we're going to be offering 2 rounds of funding for the program. Last year, we only had 1 round of funding. This year, we're going to be offering funding at the same time as both of our pre-development rounds. The goal of the policy development program is to have an impact on development beyond individual projects and support cities setting up policy infrastructure to help meet LCA and Thrive goals. So through the program, we provide funding for locally adopted policies that further LCA goals and have an impact on physical development in the city. The policy can be citywide, something like an inclusionary zoning policy, or it can be area specific like a TOD zoning policy. So as with all of our programs, the policy program has an emphasis on equitable development. In the application, we are going to be asking how the policy is going to help realize more equitable development outcomes and how you're considering equity in your policy development. In order to participate in any of the LCA programs, cities need to be part of the local housing incentives program and need to establish goals for affordable and life cycle housing. Right now, we have 76 cities participating. We do a full re-enrollment every 10 years, but cities can elect to participate at any point. I've got a note that audio just went out for someone. Did other folks lose audio? Can you just put a note in the chat if you can hear me or if you've lost audio? And I guess if you can't hear me, you won't know that I'm asking this question, so I'll put it in the chat as well. Okay. All right, so it looks like other folks can hear. I'm going to keep going and we'll have this for the recording. So hopefully we can still share that information out. So I want to note that in addition to the requirements to apply, cities applying for projects that involve housing have to have adopted a fair housing policy in order to receive funds. So if you don't have a fair housing policy, you could apply, you could be awarded funds, but you won't actually be able to receive any of those funds until the policy is adopted. We are currently partnering with the Housing Justice Center to offer technical assistance on developing a fair housing policy. So if you're looking to do more than just a baseline fair housing policy, this policy development program can actually help create that fair housing policy for your city. But if you're looking to do just a straight fair housing policy, we do have free resources available to create a fair housing policy. If you have any questions about enrollment, or if you're wondering if your city is participating in LCA, please feel free to reach out. We do have a full list of participating cities on our website. You might notice that some of those cities have an asterisk next to them. And that means that the city isn't necessarily in full compliance to be able to apply and receive funds if they're awarded funds. But like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect you with the right resources to be able to enroll if you're not already enrolled, or understand in more detail what those requirements are. Right, so what kinds of policies might be eligible through the policy development program? So the policies should meet the LCA goals that I mentioned earlier of supporting affordable housing, living wage jobs and economic opportunity, creating more density and connections, environmental sustainability, and the policy does need to address more equitable outcomes. It should have an impact on physical development, and the policy should be locally adopted. Since cities are applying for developing a policy, you won't necessarily know for certain if that policy is going to be adopted by your city council. Of course, before you apply for the policy, you should have an idea of the viability of that policy with your council and have done some of the work to understand what those barriers might be. We have restructured the disbursement process for the policy awards this year. So this year, the policy awards are going to be made with a 25% refundable match from the city. So once we get final documentation that the policy that you have developed with the funds that were awarded has been submitted to your city council for a vote, you will get that 25% match back. Last year, we had a requirement that the policy be adopted by the city. And this year, we're really just looking for documentation that that policy has been submitted to the city council, and that you've gone through that full process of developing the policy and submitting it for approval. So the key dates to be aware of are April 21st and July 21st. This is when applications are due. Applications will be open about a month before they're due, and we will have a Word document of questions available on the website when the applications open. We have this available for the other programs just to help facilitate collaboration on the application and make it a little bit easier to work together rather than having everyone try to work in our web application portal, which is called Web Grants. Policy awards are expected to be approved by the Metropolitan Council in June and September. For those of you who are familiar with our pre-development program, you might notice that the policy applications are due on the same timeline as the pre-development applications. Like with our other LCA programs, any work that is done on the policy development before the awards are approved will not be eligible for reimbursement. So we can only support awards, or we can only support activities that are done after the award has been approved. The awards are made on a reimbursement basis, so you'll submit invoices and then we will be able to reimburse you for those eligible costs. So I just want to make sure everyone keeps that in mind as you're planning the timing of your application and that policy development work, that anything you do prior to the date of award will not be eligible. And again, as I'm going through these, please feel free to put questions in the chat. I'm kind of going back and forth and checking the chat so that I can answer questions as we go. There is a funding limit of $50,000 per city, and this $50,000 will be included in the pre-development limit of $300,000 per city. So if your city is applying for both pre-development and policy development, just keep that in mind, that you'll be combining those to create your per city limit for each round. Each city can submit one policy application in each round of funding. The grant term is 2 years, which means that all grant requested activities should be completed within the 2 years of the grant term. If it's needed, we can offer up to a 1-year extension. If you do need an extension, what we would do is have you submit an extension request. We'll go over that with you and see if it meets our criteria, and then we can approve that extension for you. So like I mentioned, we have restructured the disbursement a little bit. So we have that 25% refundable match. The $50,000 limit is inclusive of the match amount. So the most that you could be awarded as part of the grant, of that initial award, is $37,500. And when your policy then goes to the city council, we would reimburse you for the 25% match that you put in as the city. We have expanded the eligible activities this year. It's a pretty small list because we really see this program as paying for a consultant or city staff time to work on the policy development and do any engagement that needs to be done around creating the policy. We cannot pay for general staff time or salaries. And if you're paying for city staff time, if you're requesting for city staff time as part of the grant, we will just need to see that those hours for city staff time are directly related to the specific policy. Last year, the funding was only available for consultant time. This year, we've expanded that into to city staff time that's directly related to policy development. So I had mentioned earlier that TOD zoning policies would be eligible. And for folks who have been familiar with LCA for a while, you might remember that we used to have a TOD zoning program. This policy development program is really an extension of that TOD zoning policy program. So we're looking at a much wider variety of kinds of policies, but if you're interested in developing a TOD zoning policy, that would still be eligible. Some other examples of policies that would be eligible would be an inclusionary housing policy, a green building policy. The cultural corridors in Minneapolis would be an example of policies that would be eligible. We did have a pre-development application from the city of St. Paul a few years ago to develop an anti-displacement overlay district, which was really kind of the catalyst to push us to get this policy development program off the ground. It kind of fit into pre-development, but wasn't a great fit for pre-development. And we wanted to be able to support cities making larger scale efforts to meet LCA goals that have an impact beyond just single projects. So we had 2 applications that came in last year. They were both funded. The applications, one was for policies that would support a sustainability plan that was developed by the city, so that there would be a little bit more push behind that sustainability plan. And then the other was a zoning update for the city to encourage more density and to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions there. And I've got a question here in the chat that leads wonderfully into the question that I have for everyone. So I will read this question out and answer the question after I ask a question that I have for everyone in the group. So while you're thinking about it, I can answer this question. I'm really curious if there's any ideas of policies in your city or other policies that you have been thinking about that might be eligible. We can talk through if those might be eligible, but I would love for you to put some of those in the chat, any policy ideas that you might be thinking about. The question that we have here in the chat is, what about a zoning overlay for bus rapid transit? Yes, that would be eligible as long as the zoning overlay is having an impact on physical development, which I assume it would with a zoning overlay for BRT. Yes, that would be an eligible policy. And I'm just going to take a brief pause here and give folks an opportunity to put potential policies that they've been thinking about in the chat. And if there's any policy that you would like to talk about or ask a question off mute, just let me know in the chat. I can unmute you and we could try to make this a little bit more interactive. It can be a little bit hard with the webinar setup sometimes. So zoning updates to add more housing types throughout the city. Yes, that's another policy that would be eligible. If you're meeting those goals of creating more housing opportunity, especially with that emphasis on affordable housing creation and affordable housing preservation, yes, that would be an eligible policy. So I'm just going to pause for a little bit longer and see if we have any more policies coming through in the chat. All right, well, if anyone has any others that they think of, please feel free to put them in the chat. Like I said, I can answer questions as we go, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. So before I get into the scoring in more detail, I do want to explain how we're addressing equitable development outcomes. And while we are considering equity broadly, we're really looking to see how you are considering the intersection of race. Race is the largest predictor of inequitable outcomes in Minnesota, so policies that are considering racial equity will be prioritized. If you are looking at another form of equity, you'll certainly still receive points for those considerations, but you won't receive full points unless you're also considering how race is impacting the policy area that you're addressing. This is how we're looking at equity in all of our programs, and you might notice that in our scoring criteria, we do have this statement at the top of all of our scoring tables to let everyone know how we are thinking about equity and our emphasis on racial equity. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the scoring criteria here. So the scoring criteria for the policy program is similar to the scoring for pre-development, but we are focusing on citywide or area-wide policy rather than looking at a specific proposed pre-development project. So the first section in scoring is the what, or the outcomes of the policy. So this is where we're looking at how the policy is going to meet LCA objectives of housing, jobs and economic opportunity, increased density, environmental sustainability, and equitable development. We have changed the scoring this year to have more of a focus on those policy outcomes rather than on engagement around the policy. And for those of you who looked at the scoring criteria last year, you'll notice that the primary changes have been in the how and the who section of the scoring criteria for the policy program. So the how section looks at how you're thinking about who will benefit from the policy and how. We want to see that you're considering the impacts of the policy and how you might support more equitable development outcomes through this policy. The final scoring category is the who, is looking at your scope of work. So as part of the application, we are going to ask you to attach a scope of work. And excuse me, we will use this to assess how solidified your project direction is. And we also are going to ask about the consultant that you plan to work with, or if you're not sure, what your priorities might be in selecting a consultant. And with this information, we're really looking at intent and representation and the fit for the policy that you are trying to develop. We have a few resources available for you to help with your application and developing the policy. So the evaluation explanations are an additional resource that are available for all of the programs and give more detailed information on how our reviewers will be scoring the applications. So in addition to the scoring criteria, the explanations list out the questions that our reviewers are going to be asking themselves, and they give examples of how you can achieve points for each one of the scoring criteria. The examples are certainly not an exhaustive list, but they should give you a better idea of what we are looking for in each of these criterion. Personally, I think that this is the most valuable resource that we have available for applicants. We put the questions directly into our scoring sheets for reviewers. We direct reviewers to the evaluation explanations so that we have the same idea of how things are going to be scored. And for applicants to look at these, it gives you a lot more detail on the nuance of the scoring and really what we're looking for. These are uploaded as a PDF on the program pages. So if you go to our website, go to the program page, they're listed both in the scoring criteria tab, and at the bottom, there's a little section that says, would you prefer a PDF of this information? And that's where you'll find the evaluation explanations. On the apply page of our websites, you'll see a little tab that says apply for LCA grants. There is a section called application resources. And in this section, we give additional resources that might be helpful for you as you develop your policies or development projects. So the policy page has examples of policies and some policy priorities for the region. This might be valuable for you as you're looking through some examples of policies or to get some ideas for structuring policies. The final resource that I want to go over today with everyone is our data profile tool. Those of you who are applying to other LCA programs might be familiar with this tool. If you applied last year, you might be familiar with it. It is set up to provide census tract information based on a specific address, but you can use the tool to get more information about your city by using addresses in multiple census tracts. The data does come from our equity considerations data set and provides a pretty wide variety of demographic, income, and other data like level and cost of burden households or proximity to affordable daycare locations based on the address that you put in. We really encourage you to use this tool to get more baseline information about your city or a specific policy area that you're applying for. So if you're applying for like a TOD zoning policy, for example, it can help you give a little bit more information about the specific area that you're looking at. Maya Guerrero Combs is our LCA, she's part of our LCA housing team and does a lot of our data work. And she is a great resource for helping to understand the data profile, answer questions about where those data might have come from. And we really encourage you to use this tool for other projects as well. Of course, we would love for you to use it for the LCA applications that you're applying to. But if this tool would be valuable for any other work that you're doing, any other grants that you're applying for, we would love for you to use this tool as much as it's useful for you. All right, so finally, I am going to go over the schedule of LCA dates to keep in mind. So like I mentioned earlier, round 1 applications for policy and pre-development are due on April 21st. Those applications are going to be opening on March 20th. So this is both for policy and pre-development. On May 1st, the first round of TBRA applications will be due. This is for brownfield cleanup and site investigation. And then we do have a second round of pre-development and policy applications due on July 21st. And I have a question about providing a link for the tool in the chat. I will absolutely do that now. And while I pull that tool up, I'm going to pause and just see if we have any more questions. We have about 10 to 15 minutes left for questions. And I always try to leave time at the end so I can make sure I'm answering any questions that folks might have. And if you prefer to ask your question out loud, just let me know in the chat and I will unmute you. Hey, well, if we don't have any more questions, we can end the webinar early. That's okay. If any questions come up, please do not hesitate to reach out. Oh, all right, we have a question. Okay, Andrew, I am going to come to participants and I will unmute you so you can ask your question. Let's see. All right, Andrew, you should be unmuted to be able to ask your question.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak the question. So you had examples of policies that could be eligible. One of the things we were thinking of doing is we're taking actually a step back and doing a housing study that kind of looks at the needs more closely in our community, and from that would result in what are the policies that we should pursue and implement. So it's somewhat of taking a step back on that. So that's what I'm looking to put together. I'm wondering how that might fit or not fit.
That is a really, really good question. So what I would say, we are looking for a policy as the deliverable, a policy submitted as a deliverable for this grant. But if within the 2 years of the grant term you do the research and develop the policy, then we would consider that research as part of the policy development. So I think it's a bit of a timing question there for you.
Okay.
Because doing the research and developing potential policies is certainly part of the process of policy development. So if that would happen within the 2 years of the grant term, then I think we would consider all of that to be part of the policy development process.
Okay. So maybe give it a little bit more thought, scope it out, and then have a follow-up conversation on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, any other questions from folks? And you can enter these questions in the chat, or again, just let me know that you'd like to be unmuted, and I will unmute you. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any more questions come through. So I'm putting a link into the chat here. This is a link to my bookings page. I am always happy to talk through any potential policies that you might have, even if you don't think that you have a policy that's coming down the line that would be eligible for the policy development program, but you're just kind of curious. You just want to learn a little bit more about policy development or what we're doing in LCA. please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can use this link and just put time on my calendar. And I am more than happy to talk with you. I always encourage applicants to reach out and have a conversation before they apply, just so that we can make sure that everyone has a shared understanding of what we're looking for, what that process is for going through and completing an application. So please do not hesitate to reach out. Like I said, it's not weird if you just say, I don't have a policy. I just want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. I'm happy to meet you. I would love to learn what's going on in cities. So please feel free to use that link, put time on my calendar, or you can just reach out to me. My email address is here on the slides. And I'm very responsive over email. Email is definitely the best way to get in touch with me, either email or using that bookings link. I will answer voicemails, but typically it's a lot faster to go through with email to get in touch with me. Like I said, this recording will be available online. If there's anyone, any friends who couldn't come to the session but are interested, please feel free to share that. We'll have the link up on our website. And just thank you all again for joining me this morning. I hope you have a good rest of your day.